Hello, everyone. Are you settled?
Welcome to ETHSingapore.
Welcome to ETHSingapore. Hi, guys.
Who's excited
Let's
to be here?
Let's hear some claps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good energy.
Loud.
Not bad. So before we get started, first of all, hi to everybody watching on the live stream, ETHSingapore.co/live. We are also at capacity in this room. There are seats and screens outside in the lobby in the pit. A couple more announcements. There is a Ethereum Foundation grant survey down in the pit. And Ethereum Magicians is meeting on Monday for those who are still around.
Cool. So let's kick this off. Welcome to ETHSingapore. This is the last ETH Global event of the year, and I think that is going to be a very good one.
The grand finale.
So who are we? I'm Anna. I was presenting earlier. I have a podcast called Zero Knowledge, and it's about decentralized web stuff and zero knowledge things. You should subscribe.
And I'm Evan Van Ness. I'm part of Consensus, and I have a newsletter called Week in Ethereum, which you should subscribe to. weekinethereum.com.
We're just going to plug our content. All right. So this, as mentioned, this is the finale of this year's ETH Global Hackathon series. And it's been a pretty amazing road.
It has.
So we're very curious to hear who has been where. I've been to a couple ETH Global events. And Evan, I think you've been to?
I've been to all of them, yes.
So he knows best. All right. So quick question. This was what started off the year, ETH Denver. Was anyone at the ETH Denver event?
Oh, good.
Yeah. Nice. What about ETH Buenos Aires?
All right, vamos.
Yeah, girly. ETH India.
Ooh.
Nice. Okay, ETH Berlin, my hometown. Oh yeah, it's nice numbers there, I like it. And the last one at ETH San Francisco. It's good. You guys have actually seen some of this stuff. So this leads us to ETHSingapore.
We'll need some new jokes.
Huh?
We'll need some new jokes then.
I just wanted to say, I don't think I pointed this out last time. I love these cityscapes. Whoever did them is fucking nice.
And I really want to play soccer on the floating soccer field at Marina Bay. So we should organize a game.
Cool. All right, some stats.
Yes. So ETH Global events up to this point in the year, 500 plus projects have been submitted, 3,500 plus attendees from over 40 countries. So that's amazing. Congratulations.
Very nice. Let's do some clapping. So this event, we have over 250 attendees, 27% of you are students, and there are 20 amazing sponsors.
So principles of an ETH Global event. The first is build what you want. You know, part of the fun of a hackathon and staying up all night is that you get to choose what you want to hack. So choose something that you really want to build. Showing is better than telling. Like, it's all about building. So in the judging portion, the whole point is to give a demo, no PowerPoint slides, just give a demo and talk about the problem you're solving and what you built. And then the third point is learn, mentor, and grow. So these are about, you know, getting better as a developer, learning to use tools available to you that are constantly improving in our ecosystem, fortunately, and mentoring and growing as a developer.
Yeah, and make sure you take advantage of all these amazing people that are here. So this is a hackathon, not a conference. The idea here is not just to sit back and watch. There will be workshops and people sharing information, but it's really good to engage. And lastly, this is for the ecosystem. So all year we've had these fantastic members of the Ethereum ecosystem come together for this. Remember, this is what you're building for. So I think we actually get to start. We'd like to invite Our first, or do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Manohar Kiatani is the Deputy Group COO of ETHSingapore, a leading provider of integrated urban development and business space solutions. ASB is the venue provider for ETHSingapore, and ASB has presence across 11 countries around the world with assets under management exceeding 20 billion Singapore dollars.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'm not only the oldest person here, not only the baldest person here, but probably also the dumbest person here. But you still have to listen to me because we are your warm hosts. I want to wish all of you a very good evening. Welcome to ASEAN's first Ethereum hackathon at Singapore. I understand that many of you have flown into Singapore for this event. I would like to warmly welcome you to our hot island, hot in many aspects. And I hope you have a great time here. Karthik was telling me that this is the first time he's here, and he's going to leave immediately after the hackathon is over. But we would like you to come over and over again because this is really a great place, and I want to tell you a little bit about Singapore. So first of all, my group, ETHSingapore, is privileged to host ETHSingapore here at this product, which we call the Bridge, in the Singapore Science Park. Today marks the start of an exciting weekend for all of you, and we are thrilled to see so many industry leaders gathered here for this flagship event. First, I believe Singapore is the perfect place to have this event. Singapore is a highly pro-business, pro-technology, international city in the heart of Southeast Asia. Further, blockchain has been identified as an area of high priority by the Singapore government. Exploit blockchain and export blockchain is our mantra. The Singapore Economic Development Board is actively promoting this sector and attracting blockchain companies to Singapore. Both startups and renowned MNCs like IBM and Accenture have set up blockchain centers of excellence here. The Monetary Authority of Singapore has partnered with technology provider R3 and financial institutions to develop interbank payments using distributed ledger technology. I want to add that there's a huge fintech conference and thought leadership seminar that takes place here every year. And it has continued to increase exponentially in Singapore. So I think for those of you, you may want to find the time to attend the next fintech conference that we have here. The Infocom Media Development Authority has also introduced many initiatives, including funding support to facilitate development and implementation of blockchain solutions. Recently, another of our agencies, Enterprise Singapore, announced that it will partner venture capital firm Thrive Ventures to support its launch of a blockchain accelerator. I could go on, but you got to do your hackathon, so I will not give you more examples, but suffice to say that lots is happening in Singapore in the area of blockchain. A report by Pricewaterhouse highlighted that 82% of executives in Singapore have said that blockchain initiatives are underway in their organizations, but only 15% have brought the initiatives live to the market. So this is a very interesting market. Our company itself, ASB, although I declare I understand very little about blockchain, I've asked my team to look at smart contracts using blockchain. Second, it is very fitting that today's event is being held at this location, Ascent, in Singapore Science Park, which is the cradle of Singapore's R&D thrust. Home to more than 300 multinational companies, local companies, and institutions, Singapore Science Park, together with the adjoining One North area, is a thriving ecosystem of business innovators, academia, and researchers. As the architect of Singapore Science Park and the biggest private industrial landlord in Singapore, our company ASB is committed to not only provide quality, physical workspaces, but also create platforms and communities to collaborate and co-develop new solutions in areas such as blockchain. Last year, we launched our flexible workspace solution, the Bridge, to meet increasing demand for new and innovative space solutions and connect people through events and activities. Since then, the Bridge has attracted many tech entrepreneurs and corporates and hosted numerous blockchain events. 1 year ago, we welcomed our first blockchain member, Anquan Capital. This was followed by Longhash, Npower, Zilliqa, Neo Global Capital, and NewPay. Just a few weeks ago, UOB FinLab and Longhash also held their lab crawls. What are those? Lab crawls at the Bridge. Were they crawling around? Should have come for that. At the Bridge in conjunction, you can see I'm talking, but I'm not understanding, so please forgive me. In conjunction with Singapore FinTech Festival. Earlier in July, the Institute of Blockchain Singapore was officially launched here at the Bridge and continues to be our community partner today. The Ethereum Singapore meetup was also held at the Bridge in March this year, during which Vitalik gave a keynote address on Ethereum. We are happy to see Vitalik here again today with his esteemed colleagues. And as the community at the Bridge grows, we hope to host more events like this as one of the many ways to drive the growth and vibrancy of the ecosystem. Good that you use the same word, ecosystem. This is aligned with ASB's vision to establish the Bridge as an incubation ground for innovation. We are excited to learn more about the solutions that will result from this exciting hackathon. ASB and the Bridge stand ready to further support the blockchain community, working closely with brilliant minds like you. And I've told your colleagues here, we have locations all over Asia and now also in the US, and we would love to host you wherever you go. We believe in being partners. With that, I wish all of you the best of luck and great fun. Thank you so much.
I'll switch to...
Thank you, sir. And up next, we have a fireside chat with Kartik Talwar from ETH Global and Dr. Vitalik Buterin from the University of Basel.
We need that second. Test.
Test.
So Dr. Vitalik, thank you for joining us. For those of you who don't get the joke, he just got his honorary degree last week, and now he's a doctor. We're super excited to welcome all of you here. Thank you so much for being in this room. It's amazing to see a massive crowd of developers excited to be hacking on a weekend, and especially here on a Friday night. I think we kind of already went over the numbers, but there's people from about 30 countries that are represented here, and they kind of flew in for this weekend, and we're super excited to host all of you. So I kind of wanted to focus a lot of this chat on just kind of having a conversation around anything from how the Ethereum project has evolved to where we are now, which is at this hackathon, and how we can make this a conversation around what is exciting to build. Mm-hmm. So I'll kind of start off by just asking, you are the chief scientist of the Ethereum project. Right now, what does your day usually look like, and sort of what are the things you focus on?
Let's see. So this morning, I participated in a couple of GitHub discussions on the Ethereum Serenity spec, which is what we're doing, the spec that's describing currently the intended proof of stake protocol, and then also parts of the sharding spec. Yesterday, I worked on that blog post where I described in my own words what I think CBC Casper is and like how it works. I also wrote a post describing a layer 2 scalability thing that makes cross-shard transactions go faster. In days before, and it's sometimes researching a lot of just keeping up with what other people are thinking and reading, a lot of just talking to different community members, and sort of helping different projects and efforts like Plasma and so forth out. So it's like some of everything.
That's awesome. So, kind of from your experience or the way you work, what is the life cycle of the work you do from the research side, making it to the application side, and kind of at what point do you kind of consider that as a handoff versus things you're involved with to the full-on development?
It does kind of hand off at different stages. So there are times when I would come up with an idea and like first of all, sometimes there's either a bug in the idea or there's a better idea, so it kind of stops and gets scrapped there. Then after that, the next step is if people like it, then either someone kind of likes it enough that they just take the idea and start off and go on a path developing it themselves. So with like for example, minimum viable plasma and like plasma cache and plasma prime, like there's already teams of developers that want to do plasma. So as soon as they see a better way to do plasma, they just go ahead and do it. Sometimes for layer 1 stuff, I do needs to be kind of more actively involved going later into the pipeline because it's not just like layer 1 is really important, and it's not just a matter of kind of the basic ideas. We also want to make sure the spec is kind of maximally clean and simple, and make sure the spec does everything that we want. And generally there's like a lot of loose ends that it's important to try to tie up as well as possible. And like for 1.0, we have this sort of parallel track approach where a lot of teams have already started developing clients, and they're kind of keeping up with the changes to the spec at this point. Though at some point fairly soon, well, development on the spec itself will kind of slow down a lot, and it'll mostly be development. Another kind of later stage part of the pipeline that's also important to remember is just people often have questions, and it's good to answer people's questions.
No, this is wonderful, and it kind of set up the stage for all the 10 things I had on my list to ask. But before I get to those, what I want to talk to you or ask you is, DevCon 4 just happened about a month ago. It's the Ethereum Developer Annual Conference. What were some of your takeaways from being at the event and kind of seeing about 3,000 people attend and talk about and be excited about Ethereum?
So one of the things that, and we were definitely kind of trying to do as a deliberate strategy, and I'm very happy that at least I think it's been going very successful so far, is to try to kind of make bridges between the Ethereum community and other communities, both inside crypto and outside, that we feel share similar values. And so this
Zcash being one.
Yeah, like with Zcash, like we came to their conference in Montreal a few months ago. Now they came to our conference. They presented at DEF CON last year about a bunch of zero knowledge stuff. They presented about at DEF CON this year about even more zero knowledge stuff. Zuko gave a really nice talk about privacy. Then there's also all of the other crypto communities that show up, and I saw the Bitcoin Cash people, and they expressed kind of how much they kind of like the Ethereum community and how they appreciate its kind of general friendliness. Outside the crypto space, in Glenn Weil from Radical Markets, Stuart Brandt from the Long Now Foundation, Cory Doctorow, and then there's a kind of list that goes on and on. And so I think it's definitely good to see all of that attention from the outside, both because people outside the crypto space kind of caring about what we're doing is a useful form of validation. Like it makes sure that we are building something that at least these other people also consider to be actually useful. And having a kind of two-way communication between them also ensures that they know and what's going on our side, and we can tell them about what the technology is and give them kind of some of the ideas so they can figure out what to do with it, and we learn from them what kinds of problems they're working on, what kind of challenges could actually be affected by and kind of resolved by the technology, which is also really nice because it's helps us to kind of continue to steer where the emphasis is. So I think that's like those kind of relationships are very valuable, and it's something that I feel like we've been definitely doing fairly well so far, and we should strive to do even better going forward.
Absolutely agree, and that's wonderfully put. And it's the same reason events like these also end up becoming those test grounds where people can experiment and prototype things over the weekend, and that sets up a lot of the experimentation to evolve into products or problems that people need solutions for.
Yeah.
Solutions to people. Yeah.
Yeah, look, one thing I've been starting to kind of force myself to care more about lately is to try to look beyond kind of sticking things on a blockchain for the sake of sticking things on a blockchain, because I feel like that's what a lot of the earlier crypto projects were. But at this point, it's fairly clear that if we want crypto to get more adoption at this point, that it has to get adoption by providing real value to people and so on and so forth. And for that to happen, we have to kind of be more explicit and clear and understand better, what is the specific value that the technology provides.
Do you think in this case, the only possible path here is we know that we have these certain primitives that exist in this decentralized or this crypto world, or just even for Ethereum, and we have to figure out what the best solution could be? Or is it
It's
still
not necessarily us figuring out. It could be the people that already are in the communities that care about whatever the specific problems are that figure it out. But if we educate them and then let them educate us, then the opportunity that we'll actually figure it out kind of increases.
Got it? I think we're having some mic troubles with.
Wow.
There we go. Solved.
Yeah.
So earlier today, you were on a panel about scalability and just sort of the attempts in layer 1 and layer 2. What I want to kind of talk at a high level is, yes, we know that things need to be faster for us to kind of look into comparable applications that we are used to now, and also there's a lot of efforts being worked on, but oftentimes we miss to highlight what the trade-offs are or the complexities that get introduced as a result of working on these things. What are some of your thoughts on kind of what these trade-offs or complexities end up being that we don't often talk about?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's important to remember that the technology as of today is still fairly immature, and there's a lot of kind of little kinks that don't theoretically need to exist, but as a matter of fact today do exist. So things like nodes not perfectly syncing and sometimes falling off the network for a couple of minutes, or light nodes not fully connecting very easily. Things like transactions taking like 3 minutes to get included in the chain because of bad gas price estimation. A huge portion of the network being on Infura instead of like some more decentralized solution. And there's this kind of longer and longer list. And like, especially as someone who spends more time on the theoretical side, like on the theoretical side, there's no real reason why these hurdles need to exist. And like, theoretically, if you just sort of throw more resources at the problem, it seems like that we can make a lot of those issues go away. But the fact is, we haven't yet thrown the resources at the problem, or we've only started and in any case, the issues haven't yet gone away. And that's something that's important to recognize.
Absolutely. Do you think it's not even about any good or bad, but how do you think about parallel implementations of the problems that we know we need to fix, and then kind of hopping back and forth, or just kind of, how does that change the developer experience when you have so many options that are all in work in progress stage, and then now developers have to choose or pick and think about how to evolve as the protocol is also evolving?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge at this point. One of the issues with building applications that depend on like especially more either layer 2s or frameworks or kind of anything other than the base chain is that those are kind of extra dependencies that you have to worry about. Those often have their own user experience issues, and then any one of them could just end up becoming a not maintained project later. So it definitely does kind of add to compounding the problem. But on the other hand, when someone builds something that's like genuinely reliable and useful and valuable, then that's something that can really reduce complexity. So like in one thing that's kind of annoying in the short term is that a lot of application teams are starting to move from like pure layer 1 to some layer 2 for scalability. And on the one hand, the scalability gains are real, but on the other hand, like Ethereum is really nice because programming applications on it is relatively speaking quite simple. You write the piece of code, dump the piece of code on chain, and the piece of code does what it's supposed to do. Whereas if you're building a state channel application, at least at this point, you have to personally worry about, oh, when the channels get opened, when the channels get closed, when how do we actually write the code to implement this weird logic? How do we do meta channels? How do we do atomic swaps between them? You know, if we make a plasma thing, then what does the exit game look like? And like blah 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 blah. And like in the long term, you know, you're not going to get applications if, in order to get a useful application, you have to both be an expert at whatever your application actually is and be an expert at making, you know, weird crypto-economic layer 2 things. And so like there's definitely a goal of trying to create kind of fairly generalizable layer 2 kind of plug and play frameworks that people could just like run and use and then adapt to their application fairly quickly. And I know there's been a lot of good work on trying to make that happen for state channel projects. I know, you know, there's been increasing and kind of faster work on, you know, kind of plasma test networks. So
Absolutely. I guess like there's a side of dApps that talk about usability from the end consumer standpoint, but this is a UX improvement on the developer side, and just kind of abstracting that to make it easy for developers to go in there is equally important.
Yeah, I mean, I think developer experience and user experience are both important. And like the two issues are not always fully separate because part of developer experience is a developer's experience in creating an acceptable user experience.
Yeah, it's very recursive. So kind of coming back to this hackathon and just sort of themes in terms of things we can focus on near term. When we were talking about this chat before, we kind of made a list of possible things we could possibly focus on and kind of brainstorm ideas about. So I generally just took down a lot of notes, and essentially what I want to do is kind of get your thoughts on anywhere from, if you were to do something in this category, what is something that makes sense, and what are some of your wish list items? So some practical themes are basically applications of crypto economics.
Sure. So one kind of category of thing I care about that I have kind of talked and posted about a couple of times, but I think hasn't been discussed enough is the use of crypto economics for anti-spam and things like chat and social applications. So like basically the one very simple kind of archetype of this that I came up with recently is what I call a proof of stake conditional hash cache. So the original version of Hashcash, right, basically said that it's like an anti-spam measure where in order to send an email that someone will see, your computer has to do a bunch of work, and then the proof of work gets attached with an email. And if the proof of work, say, costs you 5 cents to make, then that's kind of a cost of 5 cents of sending an email. The way proof of stake conditional Hashcash works is that instead of burning the 5 cents through proof of work, you would along with your message, publish a kind of pointer to a on-chain deposit, which could be bigger, say it could be 50 cents. And then only if the recipient considers that message to be spam, they can press a button to basically burn the money. And so that way for spammers, it's like as expensive or even more expensive than proof of work Hashcash, but for regular users, it's free, right? So and then you can expand this to things that are kind of more than two parties. So you can think of, for example, like social media platforms where people can create an account with a deposit, and then someone has the ability to, like, basically if your account gets banned, then the deposit ends up getting burned and things like that. And the reason why I care about things like that is I think as we've figured out over the last decade or so, problems around spam, trolling, like that whole category of things, blah blah blah, on internet applications are very real. And it seems like a lot of the kind of mainstream world is moving toward just requiring identity as a way of solving these problems, which solves the problems, but on the other hand has some very kind of dark consequences in other ways. And crypto economics is like basically an alternative that kind of solves the anti-spam problem and makes spam expensive, but at the same time is first of all much more protective of privacy. Second of all, any identity system is going to have a very hard time being usable by everyone in the world, and so it becomes much more accessible. Third, it just becomes like more friendly to people who really care about protecting their privacy, and it's also just another way of making accounts easier to get. I mean, also just relying on, things like phone numbers for everything is just a huge security hole, and there's a bunch of reasons. So something in that general space, I think, would be interesting to see explored more.
I hope everybody's taking notes because these are excellent hackathon ideas.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned identity here.
Mhm.
I'll try to merge that with two categories: just just identity as a problem in this space, as well as sort of zero knowledge proofs and ZK snarks and starks that are coming about.
Mhm.
How do we can be practically users of those technologies or primitives?
Yeah, so I mean, I would also just kind of expand from identity to like reputation more generally. And because it's important to think of identity not just as like a thing that gets assigned by a central authority, but more generally just the idea that people you interact with can be more inclined to trust you if you know that you have some history of interactions with other people that seem to have gone well, right? And that's something that's useful as a primitive in a bunch of ways. So like one simple example of this is you can make things like lightning networks work more effectively with just without kind of fairly complex like multi-channel locking structures by basically saying like we'll use more trust, A sends to B sends to C sends to D sends to E, but then for each link you would only send smaller amounts at a time, and you would go up to bigger amounts when that's whoever the person is that you're interacting with has some higher reputation. And you can kind of automate these protocols. You can automate them in ways that impose kind of mathematical bounds on how much money you lose. You can use zero knowledge proofs to do these to do a lot of these protocols in a way that preserves privacy better. So like one of the there's kind of two contradictory goals here, right? Where one is that you want to maintain some kind of reputation so that you can become more trusted as a result of long running behavior, and then having the ability to trust makes kind of future interactions more efficient. But then on the other hand, you don't want literally everyone to see that all of these activities can be traced to each other. So you can do weird fancy zero knowledge proof stuff to create reputation systems where you can come up with some kind of score that says this person is trustworthy, and no one has said bad things about them before, and people have said good things about them without actually kind of linking people's behavior to each other.
So sort of a side quick question. If somebody wants to work on a reputation project here, what are some resources they can look at that kind of help you understand how to bootstrap a network that's
Sure.
decentralized?
I would recommend, first of all, look up like different kinds of trust metrics. So I think Advogado trust metric is like one keyword thing that you can look up. There's another category of thing is a kind of proof of unique identity. So there's something called, I think, Pseudonym Party that's trying to do that. A third thing is also just understanding zero knowledge subproofs and ZK snarks themselves, because that's what you need for privacy preservation. And for that, there's like a bunch of theoretical materials on what ZK snarks are, and I wrote some of them. But then there's also the actual libraries, libsnark and then Socrates and like the different toolkits. You can also look at the source code of existing applications that use ZK snarks. So for example, you can look at some of Barry Whitehead's stuff around, rollups, and it has other applications. Like generally, if you want to build something, like starting from something that already exists and kind of editing lines of code is definitely a good way to do it a lot of the time.
That's awesome. So we kind of covered reputation, identity, and snarks in there. One other interesting category, I think, is just the kind of the emergence of serverless applications and mixing that with blockchains. How do you kind of see that? How do you describe that? And what are some of the applications you see?
Yeah, so like the most recent one I think in this category is Uniswap, right? So like basically decentralized exchanges have historically had like terrible user experience, because if you want to convert from A to B, you have to convert your ETH to WETH and then do some other thing, then put up an order, and then the order book depends on logs, and so the order book takes 2 minutes to load, and then you click on some other order, and then, oh, by the way, you forgot to load a bunch of logs, and you clicked on an order that's a day and like 20% of price movement out of date.
Don't forget to unwrap the
Yeah, right. Then you take the other, you got your other token, then your other token, you have to move it out of the exchange, and then you withdraw it again, and like the whole thing's overcomplicated. And also these decentralized exchanges often depend on like centralized servers to manage the order book, which is annoying because, well, for various reasons, those centralized servers can disappear. Those centralized servers could get attacked, and like a bunch of things can happen. And the Uniswap is this like really nice and interesting design, which basically like is entirely on chain, does not have a kind of order book. Instead, you basically are kind of buying and selling against the liquidity pool, and it depends on just like basically arbitrage to keep prices in line with the actual market price. And the user experience is basically you take coin A, you send it in, and you just immediately, literally within the same transaction, get coin B out, and that's it. And like it's literally more usable than even the centralized exchanges, and it is decentralized, and it does not depend on servers whatsoever. So I think we'll expect to see kind of more applications that start following this kind of pattern, because like just the ability to kind of create an application and just fire and forget it and run it, with kind of zero infrastructure. I think, at least to me, it was always a big part of the original Web3 vision, and it's good to see it actually kind of becoming more and more possible.
From a protocol standpoint, to make a lot of those kind of standalone serverless applications happen, what should we prioritize?
I think scalability is important, but also in the shorter term, it's important to remember that there are decentralized protocols other than Ethereum blockchain itself that are necessary for this. So probably the top two are decentralized message passing and decentralized peer data storage. So basically, what Whisper and Swarm were kind of filling in the original vision. And then more recently, there's been other protocols, and then there's been people building on IPFS and so on and so forth. So trying to kind of build up those layers and make sure those layers are more robust so that, for example, it's not just the smart contract code that can just live in the decentralized cloud. It's also the user interface for the application that you can just push into the decentralized cloud, and also just fire and forget and be fairly confident that it'll be still floating around somewhere that users can access 5 years from now.
No, that's awesome. So this is a very interesting thing, which is we kind of talked about some of the applications from a short term, which is kind of things we can prototype this weekend, to upcoming months. And this is kind of like a wish list for you. And the Ethereum Foundation itself has this grants program where people can apply to get a grant for the project that they're working on. And there's a lot of things that the foundation and just the ecosystem has a list for things that they need, anywhere from documentation to implementations in other languages for clients or libp2p or state 2, layer 2 and state channel implementations to Plasma implementations. Usually the wish list comes from a handful of people on the foundation side. For the long term, what is your personal wish list of like crazy or really ambitious things that you would like to see done on either Ethereum or just blockchains in general?
So I guess like closer to the base layer, I mean, there's obviously the base layer itself, and then there's Whisper and Swarm, and kind of Whisper and Swarm-like things being kind of developed up to their full potential. Like, I want to be able to use the decentralized cloud to back up my hard drive, and I want to be able to just like fire it and know that if I just have, the address and my password in 5 years, I'll be able to download it again. I'd say, also, like for the infrastructure needed for all of these zero-knowledge proof-based applications to be just very easy to build and deploy, and that includes, snarks, starks, programming languages, Exocrates, and like all of these related things. On the kind of moving a bit up the stack, a kind of richer and more diverse ecosystem of oracles for providing data, and like both centralized oracles and kind of Augur style decentralized oracles. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how that Augur market on who won the election in November ends up resolving. I think that'll be a really interesting kind of test of a decentralized oracle's ability to be sane. Going even further up, I mean, just another one I care about is also wallet security. So, I talk about this basically every time, but like coming up with like smart contracts or secret sharing or whatever, some mechanism so that users can be sure that if their computer or phone or password or whatever gets lost or stolen, they don't lose all of their money and along with their identity and like their estate and every application they care about. So that's something where it's like we know what a multi-sig wallet is and we know what secret sharing is. So from a cryptography point of view, it's not the hardest problem, but from a kind of user experience design problem and coming up with like what specific instantiation of these components is maximally grandma friendly, I think is definitely an important challenge for people to think about and kind of try to come up with some more solutions for.
I hope you're still taking notes.
Mm.
So the next kind of few minutes, I want to spend doing a segment that we did before, even at ESF, and which we kind of stole from Tal Cohen. And the segment is called underrated or overrated. I'm going to name one topic, and you have to say is this underrated or overrated, and then a one-line comment on why. So we'll start off with ZK Snarks.
I would say still slightly underrated. Like, I don't like. To me, general purpose zero knowledge proofs are like literally on par with blockchains in terms of kind of the power of that and the transformativeness of the technology. It's like the ability to just have privacy and correctness of execution at the same time is just something that cannot be understated.
That's fair. What about formal verification?
I would say at this point around probably about correctly rated in terms of like people talking
That's
about
not binary, Vitalik.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. The one formal verification related thing that's still underrated is just making it easier for developers writing contracts to formally verify them. Like, I want to be able to, add claims on top of a Solidity and Viper contract to just have them be checked automatically. And so far, formal verification just seems to be this racket where like a small number of people can earn $250,000 in the course of 8 weeks, and like that's terrible and should change.
That was a good one. Stable coins.
I'm at this point. I would say the fiat-backed variety, kind of backed asset variety of stablecoins still slightly underrated, and the MakerDAO style category probably. I don't know. I want to do the cop out and say correctly rated at this point because I feel like it is like it's done a really good job of like surviving a 94%, 93% whatever price crash in the underlying collateral, and but on the other hand, like people and the market seem to recognize it as such. For kind of issuer-backed stablecoins, the reason why I find them interesting is that I think there are a lot of like even mainstream applications for programmable money that people can find very interesting and valuable. And like there isn't really something that exists for just a thing where you can build your own Kickstarter-like thing. So, and even things like like building crypto Venmos and so forth. Like there's another important application for this is, or the reason why I care about fiat-backed stable coins is that they can kind of disintermediate part of the centralized exchange cycle. So basically, like if you look at historical centralized exchange hacks and thefts, Bitfinex, Mt. Gox, blah, 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 the greatest majority of the problems was not on the fiat side, it was on the crypto side. And so
the mutability of it is
yeah, like the vision that I want to see the community try kind of moving closer to is that centralized exchanges specialize in basically being the fiat gateway and then converting fiat-backed tokens to things like ETH is something that can be done in a either decentralized or at least kind of plasma-style non-custodial way.
So it's rated sufficient.
I think the summary was underrated. No.
And finally, Singapore.
Ooh. This
There's only one correct answer here.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's obviously underrated, but like Singapore's really cool. It's yes. Well, hot. Yes. No. You know, the temperature is like really nice and stable. You know, not many places in the world have a 100-year minimum temperature of 19.6 and a 100-year maximum temperature of 36. Yeah. Hmm.
That's awesome. So what I want to do is end this conversation with a question, and then we'll open up the audience questions. So kind of my final question to you is, just generally, why should people care about decentralization, and why does that matter for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely think started kind of being more explicit recently about viewing decentralization less as an end in itself, but more as a kind of means to achieving a particular goals. So, like for example, the reason why I like like things like decentralized exchanges is because number one, I mean, the whole thing about exchanges getting hacked and like losing huge amounts of money is something that's like sad and it would be nice to minimize. And number two, like I actually do feel like centralized exchanges have this unhealthy level of influence over the industry because like individual listings can basically increase or decrease the price of some coin by a factor of 2, and that's like
Or more.
yeah, or more, and that's just like power that's so obviously ripe for being abused and probably is totally being abused behind our backs and we'll never know. And like basically if this is like a great opportunity for the crypto space to kind of use its own technology and values to solve its own problems. If we look at things like these like serverless applications, for example, I think it's the value that they provide is that if you build an application on top of many components, then each component you add is a dependency, and each dependency you add is a thing that could break, and is like something where if it's managed by someone, it's someone else that could break you. And so if we want to kind of actually be able to build things where people build components and then these components rely on each other and create this ecosystem cooperatively, then building more and more base components that operate in the structure where once they're built, they're like basically literally as close as possible, just guaranteed to last forever, regardless of what happens to the team, I think is like really nice. And being kind of more broad and philosophical, I think, decentralized and of blockchain applications are in some ways a kind of spiritual successor to the concept of open source, because like the nice thing about open source software, right, is that it's once again it's like you build and use applications where they don't depend on a single party that could disappear, where what's actually going on, where like have stronger assurance that it's not spying on you, it's not screwing you over in some way. And 20 years ago, it was actually a kind of much smaller fight because even stuff like Microsoft Word, like the worst thing they could do is they can like lock you in with proprietary file formats and like possibly stick watermarks into your documents or whatever. Like, but now, we're not talking about proprietary software on your computer versus open source software on your computer. We're talking about proprietary software where even your data is being stored in servers inside of Google, and we have no idea what they're doing to any of your stuff. And so trying to come up with a kind of credible technological alternative to that paradigm, I think is something that a lot of people want, and it's something that could be potentially very socially valuable.
So that was my last question, but I will ask another question as a follow-up to what you said is, do you think we often kind of conflate decentralization with transparency?
Transparency is like one of those complicated values, right? Because like there's clearly things that we want to be transparent, and there's clearly things that we're building stuff to try to make more private. And I think, the place where transparency has a role is basically so that like people know what kind of a deal they're getting, right? And so, if you want to interact with some application, or you want to just know that, like, you want to know what terms you're getting. You know, you don't want to kind of sign a blank check to people you don't know. And that's something that I think blockchains are definitely good at providing. They're good at providing kind of transparency and kind of guarantees of what the process is that you're going to be participating in. And that's something that's valuable. I mean, you can also talk about kind of transparency of organizations, and transparency of organizations can be valuable. I mean, basically just as a way of convincing people that there is nothing nefarious going on, which is something that definitely is valuable. But on the other hand, you know, there are a lot of good reasons to have privacy too. And like, we can talk about personal privacy, and my usual kind of one sentence utilitarian argument for why personal privacy is like really valuable is that basically it should not, like, people should be free to do things like to optimize for their own happiness. It should not be that every single thing that you do should carry some component of like either doing it or deciding not to do it for social approval. Because if things go kind of too go far in that direction, then you just get an equilibrium where people do things that they really don't want to do to kind of make do what they think makes each other happy, but actually the whole thing just makes everyone less happy. And but then, even aside from those kinds of more social and of privacy for the individual things, like, privacy is just a fundamentally necessary component of making many classes of mechanisms work. So even if you look at voting, for example, like, if voting is transparent, then that makes it insanely easy to pay people to vote in one particular direction. It makes it insanely easy to penalize people who vote for something you don't like. And then if that happens, then the kind of the kind of mathematical description of the game changes, because instead of it being a game where people make decisions independently, it becomes a cooperative game. And cooperative games are notoriously harder to make kind of actually be stable. And so when we are in the designing mechanisms, whether for governance or for whatever else, like, basically having the option of kind of more privacy helps reduce those kinds of issues. So I guess privacy and transparency, I mean, as well as decentralization, I think are something that you can get more mileage out of them if you start kind of decomposing them more into, well, why do we actually want this thing?
That was awesome. Well,
Mhm.
Vitalik, thank you so much for,
Yeah,
for being
thank you.
here, and we'll open up the room for questions. So if you have a question, you can just come on up or shout. I'll try to repeat the question itself. We'll do a handful of them. Oh, we actually have an extra mic, so just raise your hands, and we'll have somebody come to you.
Hi, Vitalik. So 1 year ago, you proposed an idea of DICO. So why was the community is relatively abundant by this concept?
I mean, so just to kind of describe what a DAICO is, this was my attempt at kind of mitigating the problem in an ICO where the the founders of the ICO have no incentive to not enough of an incentive to work hard, or even to just not disappear with the money. And so the way that this works is that when you do an ICO, instead of the money immediately going to the developers, the money goes to a smart contract. And in the smart contract, the participants in the ICO can vote on, like, basically how big the tap is. So, like, how big the amount of money per day, per block, per month, whatever is that goes to the founding team. And they can either vote to increase it, or they can also vote to just shut off the whole thing and immediately refund the money proportionally. And the nice thing about this mechanism is that for a DAICO to kind of break, you actually need both the voting mechanism and the founders to be dishonest, right? Because if the founders are dishonest, then the DICO mechanism can just, or the voting mechanism can just say, oh, well, it looks like they're dishonest, and so we're just going to refund ourselves the funds and we'll participate in some different DAICO. But on the other hand, if the voting mechanism gets corrupted, then if the founding team itself happens to be honest, then, well, the only thing the voting mechanism can do is it can either, like, not increase the tap, in which case money will still keep on flowing to the team, or it can cause everyone to refund the money. But then if refunding the money was the bad thing to do, then everyone who still wants to participate would still just be able to join a new ICO created by the founding team. So Honestly, I think one of the main challenges is just people are afraid of sticking $50 million into an unaudited smart contract. And so far, no one has had enough private incentive to just develop the contract and have it audited. And so if people at this hackathon want to take the first step and just develop a simple DAICO application, I think that's a totally legitimate thing to do as well.
More questions?
How do you feel like the DAICO squares with security laws? Because from my understanding, like security laws are kind of like, don't make promises to develop an application and like steadily get money from it. They just want you to develop it and like not advertise it as an investment.
I think my instinct is that whether, like, from a kind of very narrow legal standpoint, whether or not something is a DAICO should not increase the chance that it's that it's a security. But I'm like basically because like the tests that we've seen so far used in practice about whether or not something's a security have more to do with like basically whether or not the actual application looks like an investment, and also to some extent another contributing factor is like when you get money from the public, are you getting the money based on promises, or do you already have something that's basically usable already built? So if, for example, you have something that's already built and you're just collecting money into a pool that maintains it, then that seems like it's kind of lower risk than for creating a totally new project. But this seems kind of very jurisdiction specific and like talk to lawyers, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
We'll do 2 more questions. So if you have any more questions, please raise your hand and we'll come to you with a mic. One at the back.
Hi. Who would you say is more handsome, Virgil Griffith or Vlad Zamfir?
Can I answer Carl?
What about underrated or overrated?
Huh? I don't know. I just realized I haven't said overrated even once in these sections before. So like, I don't know, keep throwing me stuff and I'll say overrated the first time I think of something that's overrated.
Vlad?
Ooh. I don't know. I've actually been like warming up on at least some parts of CBC lately, though I do think the sharding stuff is overrated.
Jasper.
The name like really overrated.
Perfect. We met the official
Yeah,
quota.
Vlarding is underrated.
Perfect. Well, I think we'll end it here. Vitalik, thank you so much again, and we'll get on with the rest of the opening ceremonies. Thanks, everybody.
All right, so next up we have a couple words from some of our sponsors. To start it off, it's B0X or BZX. And if you guys want to come up, these are going to be very short presentations from a couple of the sponsors, and you guys can find out a little bit more about what they're doing. There might also be some prize announcements here, so listen.
Yeah, sure. Who's next? Hey guys, we're B0X. We're a decentralized margin lending protocol on the Ethereum blockchain. We are integrated with 0x relays and Kyber network. So if you're familiar with the 0x protocol, 0x lets you exchange assets on the blockchain in a decentralized fashion, lets you bet that something will go up. We let you bet that something will go down, and we let you leverage assets. So we're live on mainnet right now on Bamboo Relay, and we're on the roadmaps of these other relays right here, Starbit, Shark Relay, Instex. Some of our values are radical decentralization. So one of the things we really wanted to do was create an application that would outlast us. So if we went away or something like that happened, then the application would still be there, and it doesn't require us at all. So the way it works is we have two layers. We have a protocol layer where there's an escrow contract. It handles disbursement of interest. It takes in people's funds, and a second layer, which is the liquidation layer, the Oracle layer. So it's very simple on the first layer. It just takes in the funds, holds it. You can submit 0x orders to it in order to manage your asset exposure. You can use Kyber Network to manage your asset exposure. We have a liquidation layer. It's an open protocol. Anybody can build their own liquidation layer on top of it. But we built our own, which basically works by having Kyber Network as an on-chain price feed, an on-chain source of liquidity. Margin callers are incentivized by the borrowers staking a small bit of collateral. They get rewarded for that. We take a small amount of the interest on the loans as a fee, and we put that in a guarantee fund that's handled programmatically. It disperses in the case that anything goes under margin maintenance and doesn't liquidate in time for the lender to be made whole. So we have a token, works the same as the 0x token. It's a governance token. It's a fee token. So onto the exciting things for hackers, building on our protocol. We have a wish list that we made that we published on Medium that we hope everyone checks out. There's a number of different things you can do in terms of building a relay. You can create your own generic relay, one that's integrated with a 0x with the 0x protocol, or one that's standalone that works just purely with Kyber. Manage your positions with Kyber. Have margin calls handled by Kyber. You can create a dark pool relay if you want to have a matching order book that's opaque and gives just-in-time quotes. You do something like that, and you'll have a dark pool relay where people can go and they can put in large shorts on the order book and not have everyone know exactly what they're doing. You could create a relay that works like Shapeshift. You could put one on IPFS. You could create a mobile relay, or a widget, so it could be embedded in IM token or any of the other mobile clients that would want to offer shorting. Could also probably use like a protocol like Aztec to give privacy for shorters. So if somebody does a large short and they don't want everybody to know what they just did, that might be an interesting use case. You could integrate us with other liquidity providers like Totle, Fetch, AirSwap. Totle and Fetch, they both aggregate a lot of liquidity suppliers already. You could create a Hydra-like protocol for BZX that basically would be like the Hydra protocol for 0x, like a federated liquidity pool with incentive structures for liquidity sharing built in. You could create a paradigm market wrapper contract for BZX, which would be like a decent paradigm, if you're familiar, is like a decentralized relay protocol for decentralizing order books. An automated trading interface for like market makers to very easily put in a lot of positions via an API. DutchX integration, so Gnosis just released that. There's Slow Trade, that could be an interesting integration. And Chainlink, we partnered with them. We think that could be another interesting way of powering a liquidation solution. So yeah, that's it. That's what we're about. We have Bounty, 4 ETH for the best project. That's a lot less than it was when we first set that bounty, but that'll be all.
Let's see, I don't know how to use this. Up next, Kyber Network.
So which one's the next button?
That's a good question.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, hello everyone. I'll keep this short and sweet so we can get into hacking. I'm gonna introduce briefly Kyber Network. So what is Kyber Network? Kyber Network is an on-chain liquidity protocol that powers decentralized token swaps. Basically, you can embed this token swap functionality in any application or smart contract, and it allows your users to swap across different interfaces, and developers can build innovative applications, allowing to build a world where any token can be used anywhere. And what exactly can you build by integrating this token swap functionality into your application? So some examples is like a normal swapping. You can integrate this into your application, and you allow your users to swap between different tokens or Ether without having your users to leave your application. You can build a payments use case or application where you allow your users to pay with any token, but your platform still receives the token of your choice, and Kyber helps facilitate this token swap behind the scenes. And of course, you can have your financial application, such as V0X that was in his presentation earlier a while ago. You can build applications that does on-chain liquidation or on-chain fund rebalancing by leveraging this token swap functionality. So we do have bounties, a total worth of 14,000 Singapore dollars, and you can check them out at kyber.network/hack. And if you need any help, you can visit our developer Telegram group, which is a Kyber developer. And of course, you can visit us at the booth down below there if you need any help. So yeah, that's all. And one more thing, if you're thirsty, Kyber provides liquidity for you.
All right, next up is Maker. Where are the Maker folks? I'll show you how to use this right here. So it's just up.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sean. I'm a senior developer at Maker. We make a stablecoin called DAI, as well as a system of permissionless credit. So what that means is that you can use our system and lock up collateral. Vitalik talked a bit about it, but you can lock up Ether as collateral and then loan yourself DAI, which is a stablecoin. And we've been live on mainnet for about a year, and it's stayed at right around $1 US for this entire time, even in this market. So it's really useful to use if your application has any sort of fees, deposits, or payments. You can use our ERC20 token in it and not have to worry about any sort of volatility. And so we have an API prize. Really, we have both a platform and a product in that the DAI and the CDPs. One thing we're targeting right now is lowering the barrier to entry for people to use this. So right now, it's quite difficult. For example, we have these happy hours where people buy drinks at a bar with DAI, but they're actually still very difficult to use. So any sort of leveraging any sort of these new paradigms like meta transactions, recurring payments, anything with ZK Starks, that'd be really cool to see. We also hear people from 30 plus countries. If you have any sort of knowledge of banking APIs, we're trying to improve our fiat on and off ramps. So if you have any knowledge of what you can use to move DAI in and out of fiat currency, that'd be a really cool thing to see. For example, in Singapore, we have these, I see a lot of top-up cards and that sort of thing around here. Just giving you ideas. And so we're gonna split 3,000 DAI in between the top teams. And I recommend going to our community chat room, posted up here, on our dev channel to ask questions. We're also at a table or a booth downstairs. And we have a really cool NPM library, so a JavaScript library called DAI.js, which should really increase the speed at which you can start your hack. I'll be giving a talk on that, much more in-depth technical talk tonight. It'll be the last talk of the night. So after a couple hours of brainstorming on what you want to build, come out and we can chat about what you want to build and help you out. And last thing, in addition to the prize, we're starting a new community fund. It's called the Core Community Initiative. And so basically we want to continue to fund projects that we see as successful in adding to the community. So if you make a project or a company idea, and we really want to continue to fund that over time. So we hope you work with DAI, and you really can combine us with almost any other project here. So we hope you have a great time. Thank you.
All right. Next up is NewsCypher. Oh, you're all the way back there. The up button.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael. I'm the CTO of NewsCypher. And what NewsCypher is, it's basically a layer, like a privacy / encryption layer for decentralized applications. So when you build a decentralized application, every time you want to deal with private data, you want to keep your data always encrypted, because since the application is decentralized, you don't know who your data is residing with. So it could be some stranger, and not always you want everyone to see your data. So anyway, if you keep your data encrypted, it's actually pretty tricky to share this data with other people. So if your application requires keeping data encrypted and simultaneously sharing this data with other participants in the network, that's when you use NewsCypher. So NewsCypher allows you to share data while it's encrypted without decryption during this process of sharing. So you can allow someone else who has different encryption keys to read your data, which originally was encrypted for you, without you decrypting and encrypting again. So anyway, oops. Anyway, so we have some needs which we need. Basically, we want right now our implementation of NewsCypher is in Python, and we definitely want other languages to interact with it. So, and before we actually implement clients in all possible languages, we want other languages to still interact with NewsCypher network with even before these clients are written. And that's actually good enough for a hackathon task. So if you want, you can create a client for NewsCypher network in Go, in JavaScript, in anything where you actually interact with the Python client. So just a wrapper like that, which is convenient to use, and whatever way you may think is good for that. Since we talk about JavaScript, maybe interacting with NewsCypher network in the browser is good. So you could imagine some extension like MetaMask, where the extension interacts with the network, and again, it will be the Python code which interacts with it at this point. So if you can pull this off, feel free to do that. But if you can imagine any creative use of NewsCypher for anything you are building, that's the best thing to focus on. And any of this stuff is can get you to the API price, which is $2,500. It didn't change much during this year because we value it in dollars, or US dollars. So probably should switch to DAI, but it shouldn't matter. Anyway, so this is like the information which, like where you can get information about NewsCypher, newscypher.com website, and NewsCypher GitHub. And one thing which I didn't mention on this slide is the hackathon repository on NewsCypher GitHub, where we have all the information. And yeah, feel free to come to NewsCypher workshop at 11 p.m. today, where I will explain how to set up.
Thanks. Next up is consensus. There you go.
Hello, I'm Michael from Consensus. We are very excited to be here. So Consensus. Up. Okay, so Consensus is here to help the Ethereum community and promote blockchain adoption. How we do that? We have developed some tools that are here for you, for developers, for end users. You probably have heard about MetaMask, Truffle, Uport, Alethio, Kaleido. All of these tools are up and running and for you to use. So we hope that these tools will allow you to transform your ideas into reality. So this is all for Consensus. You have a lot to do over the weekend. Good luck and thank you.
Cool. Thank you guys for presenting the projects. There are some additional prizes that we're going to list for you. Evan, you want to start this off?
We have $35,000 in prizes for hacks from our sponsors. So Aragon will award $2,000 for the best integration and governance plan for an Aragon DAO, 500 to the runner-up, 1,000 DAI and Give It Swag to the team with the project with the most social impact. B0x, 4 ETH to the team with the best use of B0x, Bamboo Relay, and Seller will award $1,000 for the best use of the Seller SDK.
There's more though.
What was that?
Oh.
Just best use of BZX.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be Bamboo.
Okay, cool. So Kyber's also offering a prize. Kyber will award 3,000 Singaporean dollars worth of KNC tokens to the team with the most innovative use case for Kyber's protocol. MakerDAO will award 3,000 in DAI to the team with the best use of the Maker API. NewCipher will award, we already know this, NewCipher will award 2,500 to the team with the most effective use of the NewCipher platform. And the Raiden Network will award 2,000 in Raiden tokens to the team with the most innovative use case built using the Raiden API, and 1,000 in RDN tokens to the team with the best UX UI using the Raiden API. I think we have 3 more.
Set protocol, $3,000 total to the top 3 teams, $1,500, $1,500 to the best use of set. QuantStamp will award $1,000 to 4 teams for 4 different projects. See their dev post. Status will award for the best use of status extensions, $1,000 to 1 team and $500 to the runner-up.
So these are the prizes that you guys should look out for. They are listed on the prizes website. Now, there.
If you forget them, ETHSingapore.co/prizes.
Exactly. So here's some of our sponsors.
Sponsors, yeah. So it's always important to remember that these events don't happen without sponsors. So, take advantage of being able to talk to people about their dev tools and be able to give them feedback on that and be thankful for their use here. Let's give all our sponsors a hand.
Yeah, go ahead.
So B0x, NewCipher, Maker, Kyber Network, Consensus, Status, Set, Omise Go, Raiden, Akamba Labs, QuantStamp, Infura, and Seller.
Thank you, guys. And we also have Zilliqa, IM Token, Alpha Wallet, Open Token, Matic Network, Aragon, The Bridge, Blockchain at NTU, Neutral, ETHSingapore, SG Innovate, Kinetic, Crypto Briefing, CoinMarketCap, WXY Group, and Long Hash. So thank you again to these sponsors. I think we got them. Cheers. Singapore.
It's looking good.
Looks pretty cool. I kind of want to go up there. Okay. All right, so get set for 2 days of workshops, tech talks, free food, which is good because Singapore is a bit expensive. So free food and an after party. Cool.
So rules and criteria for the hackathon. a maximum of 4 team members. Everybody must physically be at this event. No online remote working. That's not
Your
okay.
friends can't help you. They have to be here.
As I said before, like, we don't want PowerPoint presentations. This is not a venture capital pitch. This is a hackathon demo. And all code must be written at the hackathon here and posted to DevPost. Finalists will be chosen based on technicality, originality, practicality, designality, and the wow factor. A couple people laughed. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so hacking ends at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday. Every member must have signed up on DevPost. I believe this takes a little while, so it's really important you do that early. Don't wait to the last minute to do that. You will be having 5 minutes to demo and 2 minutes for questions from the judges on Sunday. And for more, check out ETHSingapore.devpost.com.
And team formation, if you don't have a team, you should stick around here when we start.
Cool. And if you do have a team, then I guess you can get started after this.
It is 9:30.
Yeah.
I suppose you can.
So then I think let's give ourselves a round of applause. We're about to start the hackathon.